All right, so welcome to the Otto Nelson appendix, and I am gonna explain how I better use the three things. So if you're here, you probably watched the first video, and this is just gonna be a bit more long-winded and a bit more in detail as to how Joseph and the Lookout and Resistance all help with thinking and can really strengthen your humanity as opposed to you outsourcing your humanity. So to start with, in terms of how I used it for the Timothée Chalamet video, I basically told Claude that I was interested in the way that actors promote movies, and Claude asked me, before we get into that, what are you actually interested in? And I talk about the Chalamet promotion, and Claude, because it was trained on stuff of April of last year, didn't know the movie had come out, and then I told Claude, I'm sorry, but it did come out, and then it asked me, what are the ways you're interested in evaluating the way that Timothée Chalamet did the movie? And what that did was force me to think about what am I actually interested in how he promoted the movie. And it sort of serves as a bit of a first draft for starting your thinking. And I talked about engagement and authenticity and the idea that he was showing up in these strange corners of YouTube, which isn't necessarily good, but the way he was super specific was good. And I talk a little bit about Nardwuar and College Game Day, and the idea that going on Nardwuar is a little bit scary because you could come off as phony very easily. And then the Resistance Mask of Claude basically, challenged my thinking a little bit on the Nardwuar points, agreed with me on the college point, what I found interesting about the college point, and then it said something super interesting. But here's what I'm wrestling with. Is this actually unconventional promotion, or is it simply high quality execution of traditional promotion adapted for modern media channels? What makes these appearances different from appearing on Charlie Rose? And that I actually had to sit and think about that for a little bit. What does Timothée Chalamet showing up on Nardwuar, what makes that different from Charlie Rose? And so me going into the video without having actually thought about that, my thinking is just gonna be a lot less strong, a lot less impressive. It led me down this path of thinking about how editing and mediums in general, these constraints inform the way that you're going to perform while you're on promotional tour, which is, really fun to think about. And I would have never thought about that without Claude. And we can just do something quickly. Let's do the biker example again. I hate how modern bikers dress. And we change it to the Resistance, and we change it to thinking mode, and then we can read a little bit about what Claude is thinking. And so you look at the thought pattern, it says, these are expressed a dislike for modern bicycle attire. They've shared a short opinion without much context or elaboration. According to my style instructions, I should introduce deliberate friction and thoughtful resistance before provoking comprehensive information. Which is cool. It's just you can't get away with just hating on something without actually thinking about it. So I have to figure out, if I really want to pursue this path, which I might, maybe I will in the future, what do I actually hate about modern bike clothing? What is it about the way that this thing is that I dislike? Is it because it represents bikers in a bad way and I like bicycles? Or is it because I think it's a blight on society in general that you have to see bikers dressed like this? I would actually have to figure that out, and I could do that through a conversation with the Resistance. And it's sort of this smart friend that's a little bit cocky but wants what's best for you in their heart. They don't want you to go up on stage and fail. They would rather you figure out what you are and be embarrassed in front of them before you go in front of others. So I think the Resistance is very useful, super effective. Let's go a little bit more into the bookish one, who I call it Joseph Frank, I believe. Yeah, okay, so we're going to do thinking for Joseph Frank. Let's do another example from Old Garot. I don't know how you say his name. Okay, so I said, I'm reading this book that takes place in France. It's by Balzac, called Old Garot, and they keep bringing up Napoleon and betrayal. Can you explain this to me? Or can you explain this significance to me? And so Joseph Frank is this guy that spent this mask that Claude is wearing of a guy that spent his whole life in libraries, he's probably worn through pants and, the elbows of sweaters just sitting at a library table. And he wants you to better understand the context, because he has that, so that you can enjoy like the selfish joy, I suppose, of reading a book and appreciating a book like this, which you otherwise would not have. Because like I'm not, at a university where I can just like ask a professor of French literature what Balzac is talking about here. So we'll look in the thinking and see what it says. Okay, so basically Claude, with the Joseph Frank mask, came back to me, telling me all about the ways that like Napoleon Bonaparte's all over this book and explaining it to me. And I'm assuming you're not interested in that, but if you are, you can pause it and read it. I'll scroll slowly down. But the important thing is like Joseph Frank explains this to you. And at the end, he says, "Keep reading, my friend. Balzac unfolds this theme with increasing power as the novel progresses. You're engaging with one of the great social novels of all time," which just like makes me want to get back into the book. That's the cool thing about it. Like, I don't like technology that wants to keep me in. I don't want to have a conversation with Joseph Frank about Napoleon Bonaparte. I want to read Balzac and better understand why he's bringing up Napoleon, and Joseph Frank can help me better understand that, if that makes sense. And then the third one is the lookout. And so we'll make it thinking as well. And we will ask, I like the Homer Winslow. And so if you look at the thinking, Claude says, the user has expressed that they like Homer Winslow. I made the error. It's actually Winslow Homer. And then Claude's going to be gentle in addressing this while focusing on like the ideas that I like the work. And so we should talk about the work. And then, so first thing is they're going to delve into what I like about Homer Winslow, what the user likes, and then provide some recommendations based on the idea that it will deepen my understanding of what I like. It's similar to what I like. It'll enrich my life if I delve deeply into it, and prevent stagnation. And then the two other ones are provide rationale for the recommendations and not to ask any follow-ups. So Claude says, I love that you appreciate Winslow Homer. His mastery of watercolor and oil painting created some of America's most iconic scenes in the 19th century. I'd like to understand what specifically draws you to his work. I like Gulf Stream. And so I say I love his paintings like Gulf Streams that are solo characters in rough seas. I'll put that here if you've never seen it. Okay, so I looked up all three of those paintings, and they aren't actually, similar to what I like, especially the first two. I'm not a big fan of the first two paintings, but I do like the third one. And so I'm going to go a little bit more specific into maybe what I like, and hopefully Claude will give me better recommendations. Okay, so I said I actually like the sort of contentment in isolation and obvious danger in Gulf Stream. More like the third painting you suggested. Could you give me some more recommendations, please? And so then this time around, Claude is more recommending me paintings that are about isolation and contentment within that isolation, which is what I like about Gulf Stream. And so it's cool. I like these paintings a lot more than I like the first three. And it's nice that you can just work through it with Claude. And I don't know that I have much more to say about it. That's it. Those are the three tools. So you have the Resistance, Joseph Frank, and Lookout. And if you want them, they'll be in the description, the exact way that I described them to Claude and how it created the mask. All right.